Okay, good morning and welcome to the Modern Practice webcast series. This webcast is part of a series of webcasts which we do every Wednesday morning at the moment. And so this morning, earlier today, we did an introduction talking about what is the modern practice and how does it all come together. If you haven't seen that, there is a video available which we emailed out to everybody who'd registered this morning. This one is all about migration, moving data from where you have it today into the cloud and making it accessible. The next presentation coming up a little later today is on finding data. And then the very last one, we do the day in the life of somebody sitting in a new modern practice and various scenarios they can work through, and we actually work through them. Also, just to let you know, on December the 13th, we have a half-day seminar. So this is a paid event, and it pulls together all the training materials around the modern practice portal, and Office 365. And it's primarily aimed at staff rather than champions in a practice, to kind of give everybody a feeling for the new tools they have at their disposal and how to use them in the most effective manner. So without much further ado, this session is all about migration. It's about moving from where you are today into the cloud. It's going to talk about strategies we use as a service provider, but also hopefully describing some of the strategies you can use to make sure you get stuff that you have into the cloud as quickly and as effectively and with the best fidelity possible. So really, we're going to use some terms here, and I want to go through them so we're all on the same page. It's kind of key to have a common language. Migration, we define as the process of moving from one platform to another. So it's either moving from on-premise to the cloud, moving from Google to Office 365, or even Office 365 to Google. Migration is that process of moving. Fidelity is all about not just keeping the core data, but also the rendering of that data consistent. And what we mean by that is if I have a document, when I open it today in Microsoft Word, it looks like this. When I open it tomorrow in my new environment, it looks exactly the same. It's really important, especially when you're dealing with financial information, to keep fidelity of documents. To mean if you've got a watermark on the document, that's still there. If you've got a piece of art that says, warning, don't give this to the client, that stays all the way through. We think fidelity is really important. Speed. Migration. When we talk about migration, we talk about speed of migration. And lots of my customers say to me, Nick, how long is this going to take? And there's two metrics we use. First of all is the total elapsed time. How long does it take to do all the work necessary to move your data, plus the time it takes to move the data from where it is today into the cloud? But the second and most important piece for us as a service provider is how long a person needs to be involved in that. And what we do is we focus quite a lot on creating systems and processes which can be hands-off, to actually move things without you having to sit there and watch a progress bar move across the screen. Right. Reliability. And something we've learned when we're moving large amounts of data from point A to point B, especially when you're trying to do it without having somebody there watching it the whole time, is, I'll give you an example. We've recently moved a terabyte of data for a customer. This is actually in the progress at the moment. And it was split into three 300 gigabyte chunks. And one of them failed. Now, to move a 300 gigabyte chunk from point A to point B across the internet takes an extremely large amount of time. And so if that fails and you don't notice it, you can lose hours, days, or even weeks, if you're not careful, of migration time because something failed early on. So making sure things are reliable when you're migrating is really important. This webcast is all about that process. So I'm gonna spill my guts and share all of the tools and techniques we've used, which hopefully will give you some insight in how to do things yourself, how to move things, and give you a deeper understanding of the process we go through as an organization when we're moving people to the cloud. And hopefully from there, give you more insight into how that all comes together and how to be nice to us when things don't work. So moving on. So what do we migrate? When we move someone to the cloud, when we take you from being on-premise where things have been configured and evolved over years on servers and things, to Office 365, SharePoint Online, etc., there's a bunch of things we move. And so the first one we focus on, and really where we start, is by moving email. And there's a number of reasons for that. We move email first because it's easy. We do it a lot. We're very, very familiar with it. And it gives us the opportunity to test and make sure that all of your settings, your new user accounts, the systems are all working as they should be. So we always do email first. We then move files to SharePoint Online. So that's all your documents and other things. And we commonly need to do quite a lot of work to make that happen. And I'm going to show you how that works in this session. Finally, we move data for some customers to Workflowmax. So we have a bunch of tools which extract data from things like Handysoft and MyOb and put those into Workflowmax. So you can use that as your practice management solution. And then settings and configuration really live all over the place. And they're not commonly things that can be easily moved around. So that's where a bunch of thought and manual effort goes in. But boy, we're going to see if we can automate it as we move forward. So let's talk about Office 365. Yeah, Office 365 for us is the core part of the modern practice. Now, I know for most of you, the core part of the modern practice is probably Xero or practice management, but for us as techies, it's Office 365. So I'm just going to talk about the different steps we go through to set up Office 365. The first thing is called the tenancy. And that's turning around to Microsoft and saying, Microsoft, we have a customer here, they'd like to use Office 365. And your Office 365 environment is technically called a tenancy. And we set up one for each customer. And that tenancy has a bunch of things. One of the key ones is what we call the designator. And that's the little bit which sits before on Microsoft.com when we set you up. From there, we then need to personalize it. We need to make it yours. And so what we do is we do a bunch of work on DNS records. So first of all, setting up tenancy is really easy. It starts to go wrong when we start to do DNS records. DNS records mean that when I send an email, say for example you send one to nick@hub1.com, if DNS is set correctly, that flows into Office 365 and I see that email. If it's set incorrectly, it doesn't work, but it does more than that. DNS is about when you launch a copy of Outlook for the very first time, it asks you for your email address and your password, and it mystically connects to Office 365. There's actually nothing mystical about it. It's looking for a specific DNS record, it's reading the data out of that, and it's knowing how to talk to Office 365 from what we've put there. The next one is link. Link is what we're using right now to have this conversation, and it wouldn't be working if I hadn't got my DNS records correctly, so that my link client can automatically talk to link as nick@hub1.com. So all of those things need to be right, and it just so happens that most DNS providers don't actually let us create the records we need to create to make this happen. So you can imagine what starts going wrong when I start phoning your DNS provider and asking them to make changes. You know, imagine the phone call. Hi, Mr. DNS provider. Can you create me an SRV record pointing at this place with a port, a waiting, an IP address, etc., 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 a bunch of fields? They normally don't get that right, so that can cause us some consternation. When we've done that, we now have a working tenancy. We then go and set up your users, so people who can log in, groups of users and distribution lists and security, contacts, meeting rooms, and all the other things that make your email environment work. Now, we're pretty good at this and know how it works, but just to let you know, there's a fair amount of complexity there. The next thing is migrating your email. This is where fidelity first comes in. When we migrate email, we like to migrate all your email, all your folders, all your contacts, all your calendar entries, all your tasks, all your journal items, and all your notes. And there's a bunch of ways you can do it, some of which are really painful and some of which aren't. We actually use a third-party product written by a friend of mine out of Seattle called Migration Wiz. And we charge a premium for that work. But what we've done recently is we've actually shipped a version of that our customers can use themselves. So we charge $100 a mailbox. This one is a quarter of that price if you want to do it yourself. So I thought I'd just give you a quick look-see at that. So let me go and connect you to my secondary monitor. And I'll just let that load up for you. Here we go. So if you can see that, what you can see is this website. It's hub1.selfmigration.com. And if you want to move email from anywhere, at the moment we support Exchange on-premise and we support Google. If you want to do that from anywhere to anywhere, I can go log in. And I'll see if it'll let me log in today. Oh, I've read and agreed to BitTitan's terms of service. Right, they've just sent me an email which I'm going to go and get. We'll just wait a second for that to fly through the interwebs. And when I get that email, I'm going to click on it, and it's going to take me and allow me to log into that site. When I can log into that site, I'll be able to actually go forward and start doing a mail migration. So bear with me a second while I wait for that email to appear. I hate waiting for these things to happen. All right, I'll just update my folder. Come on, Office 365. Here we are. So just to let you know, I've got this email. I'm going to click here. And what that will do is that will open my own specific self-migration account, and I can go through and configure it so I can connect my server. And I'll show you how easy it is. I basically go, okay, let's specify servers. So I can say I'm going from Exchange or Google. I'll say I'm going from Google. I'm going to Office 365. I'll type next. All right. And I start adding some mailboxes. So I can go through and add, for example, let's say nickbow@gmail.com, nick@hub1.com. Put in the passwords if I want to and hit next. And what it will do is it'll actually go and migrate that mailbox for me with full fidelity from Google to Office 365, all in the cloud without me having to install software. And as we go through over the next few weeks, what we're going to do is add all sorts of systems to that. So it's just a thing to let you know, not only may you have migrated your primary email system, but you may have others. This tool is going to allow you to migrate those mailboxes with full fidelity. So we kind of like that one. Let's dive back to the presentation. Righty-ho. Right, SharePoint. So if we think of SharePoint, what SharePoint is it's a way of storing information, documents, and doing kind of cool stuff in the cloud. Really, rather than necessarily a document store, SharePoint really is an application platform. In the next version, they're going to be doing a lot more around documentation. But let me show you a couple of things to give you a feel for it. First of all, when SharePoint sets itself up, it's not actually very nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my monitor again and give you a quick demo. So what I'm going to do now is just connect to our very first SharePoint site we had at Hub 1, and we've got some smart people in the business, but certainly they don't think a lot about design. So this is very similar to a lot of people's SharePoint sites, and frankly I don't like it. So to create the Modern Practice Portal, we spent a lot of time talking to Zero and talking to some of the guys about how we actually build something that looks a bit nicer. So if you can compare it to a Modern Practice Portal, and I'll just connect to my demo one, which I do for these demos, you can see we've really changed the look and feel of SharePoint. So instead of having all those little bits and pieces, we tried to make it this big blocky tiles that people can click on and make things happen. Now, you see here I have a link for Zero and Workflowmax. What we're starting to do with our clients now is instead of just having a link, we can actually integrate authentication and sign in. So from that point of view, we use a tool called Okta, okta.com, which allows our customers to log in with a single login and access Zero, Workflowmax, and everything else without ever signing in again. So it's a single sign-on for the cloud, and it's kind of cool. But one of the things we've done here in Modern Practice Portal is a couple of neat things. First of all, and most of you have seen this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, we obviously have our documents, which we can play with, but we also have started integrating in data from Workflowmax. So for an organization who has a client list in Workflowmax, SharePoint can now talk out to Workflowmax in real time. And if the demo gods are with me today, which they are, you're going to see a list of my 388 clients right here. And we can use that not just to categorize documents, but we can do all sorts of cool applications with it. But I'm focused on migration today, so I will dive into that in another presentation. But today we care about getting documents from point A to point B. So I'm going to have a quick look at our presentation today and just find out which things I want to talk about. So let's talk about migrating data. So there's a couple of ways I can migrate data. I can, for example, go into the documents library in SharePoint, choose upload, and upload my documents 100 meg at a time, and 100 documents at a time. That is extremely painful, but there are other issues, and let me give you a demonstration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a document, and I'll create one in this little folder here. Here's a nice place. So let's create a document, new, and we'll create a Microsoft Word document, and I'm going to call it profit and loss. Fairly simple looking document, fairly simple looking file name. Well, watch this. If I upload multiple documents, I'm just going to browse, and I'll find it in my scans, and there's profit and loss, and I'm going to hit OK. I get an invalid file. The reason I get an invalid file is because SharePoint's not very good at allowing internet type characters into file names. Right? Because SharePoint shows everything on the web, ampersand actually means something on the web. So if I actually go back to that file and I rename it, so rename profit and loss, right, I should now be able to upload that document. Now I might find, because it's zero length file, it might say no. Yeah, it's going to do it again. Let me just fix that up. I'm just going to open that in Word, type some stuff and save it. Give me 2 seconds while I do that. So blah, blah, blah. File save, file exit. Right, there's profit and loss. I'm going to upload that document. Right, we'll browse for that file. I'll double click on it, and it will load it. So I can now upload a document, but only after I've renamed it. So I want you to think across the documents you have and think about how many have different weird characters, like potentially hyphens, like ampersand characters, the and sign you saw there, and a bunch of others. So how do we get around that? So the old way we used to do that was this. We have a tool, and this is actually mentioned on our support site, and I'll give you a link to that. And we have a tool called pfranc. I'm going to load up now. Now, what pfranc does when it comes up, just give it a little second, it takes a little while to load, is it's a mass renaming tool. So it allows me to look at a whole bunch of documents and rename them. And what you'll see here, I'll just copy it across so hopefully you can see it. Oop. Having some visual issues today. Let me check. Right, you should all be there. So this pfranc tool, which you can see badly here because it doesn't work properly, has a whole bunch of different things I can use to rename files. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to load pfranc over here. I'm going to go back to my folder. I'm going to rename my file with that ampersand character. And then I'm going to run pfranc on that folder. So let me just go find it. Sorry you can't see that. pfranc's being a bit of a pain today. So my documents, my scans, okay, scan. And if I hit rename, and yes, you'll see as if by magic, that's been renamed to profit and loss. So that's kind of simple. What are we doing? We have to take all your files. We have to then run this renaming tool across them. And when we've run the renaming tool, we can copy them to SharePoint. Easy, huh? Which is all a little bit painful and nasty, and certainly Celine, who's on the call, would have experienced all of this. So another way to do it is with this tool. Let me show you. This is a tool we use to manage scanned documents. And what this tool does is this looks at documents which have been scanned in, reads the document, and will associate it with a client. So it does a bunch of things. It will associate custom fields. It will associate against tax file number, ACN, ABNs. It will look at a specific folder. And I can actually say, if you find the word invoice, add invoice to the file name, etc., etc. I can also say, if you see PTY limited. It can also be P/L, comma, proprietary, etc., etc., etc. So I can use this to match scanned files, but there's another little button up here, which is the file and folder generator. And what this allows me to do is effectively take my folder I looked at before, and I'll go grab that, my documents. Let me just find it. Documents, my scans. So I can take this whole folder and files, and I can drag and drop that. I'm not going to at the moment because I really don't want to upload it, but I can drag and drop it in here, and the application will automatically rename things. It will automatically check them in. It will automatically update files that have been updated and actually handle all of that migration renamey stuff that we've been through. So that's the new way to migrate files and folders to SharePoint. So we're a bit excited about that. So back to the presentation, because we're starting to come up on time. So let me go here. So what we do when we sit with you is we go and create your SharePoint sites and permissions. Right? We then create the modern practice portal. And really what we're doing is we're giving a little bit of a skin over SharePoint, and we're creating some external lists which talk to Workflowmax. And we're also creating some content types and some rules, so we can do a little bit of auto-filing. And when we look at some of the things in day-to-day later on today, we'll cover that off. We then configure Workflowmax integration, so we're integrated with your specific instance of Workflowmax. All right, so I've taken you through that. I've talked about migrating data the old way and the new way. So Workflowmax migration is a bit more exciting. Effectively, to import data into Workflowmax, we have a number of options. What we do is we look at your old system, and right now we do MYOB, AO, or AE, and Handysoft. We go and take the data out of your existing system and run, wherever possible, some automated data cleansing. And that creates us CSV files ready for importing into Workflowmax. What we like to do as well is add things in your Workflowmax file which link to the modern practice portal and show you exactly, so you can click on an item in Workflowmax and it takes you to that folder in the MPP. So document management ends up being integrated. So when we've done that, we basically give you this. You have Workflowmax, Modern Practice Portal, SharePoint Exchange, Zero, Okta managing all the logins, and we kind of build that thing. So migration for us is about taking you from where you were to this new environment with everything linked together and integrated. And I hope I've kind of given you, I know it's only been 30 minutes, but I hope I've kind of given you an insight over all the different things we do. Right. So I hope that gives you a good overview. Feel free to fire us any questions you have. I'm going to stop the recording now, and then feel free to ask any questions. You can either type them in, or you can unmute your microphone and talk to me, which is always nice. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a great day.